Hello, everybody. So now we're going to turn our attention to the second half of female reproduction notes. Up to this point, we've talked about the fact that the ovary makes eggs by meiosis, makes estrogen and progesterone, which control secondary sex characteristics in the menstrual cycle and reproduction generally. Now we're going to talk about if the egg is released from the ovary and there's intercourse while the egg is still in the oviduct and still alive, then you're going to have fertilization. Right? If there's intercourse, semen will be ejaculated out of the man and into the vagina, and the sperm will pass up through the vagina, through the cervix, which is the little hole at the bottom of the uterus, through the uterus, and then up into the oviduct. Now, if there's an egg there, we talked about that with the menstrual cycle, and we should assume there's always an egg there because we don't really know exactly when, because there's no typical woman. Officially, the stereotypical textbook woman has an egg from days 14 to 17, but we really don't know that, so one should assume there's always an egg there, and if there's an egg and there's intercourse in sperm, you will get fertilization, right? And if you have a sperm and an egg fuse, what do you get? You get a baby. When it's one cell big, it's called a zygote. Remember that the sperm is monoploid, the egg is monoploid, and so you're going to get a diploid zygote. If you get a zygote, a diploid zygote, that baby that's one cell big is going to start to grow, right? It's going to divide by what type of cell division, mitosis or meiosis? Mitosis. Mitosis is about growth, right? Meiosis makes sperm and egg. Mitosis is for growth. So once we have this zygote that is diploid, it's going to divide into 2 identical cells by mitosis, about 4 identical cells by mitosis you'll just continue that until you get a baby. As that's happening, it's going to move down the oviduct toward the uterus. And after a week, roughly, the baby is going to implant in the uterus and grow there for the remainder of the pregnancy. At the beginning, when it's one cell big, what's the baby called? A zygote. Then it's going to grow, right, by mitosis, and you're going to get several cells growing into 2-week-old. At that point, during that time, it's called an embryo. Now, you can see that you start to get cells that are different. I mean, here you're getting a backbone, and you're getting an eye, and you're getting a brain, you're getting the beginnings of legs and arms. Like, these cells are not all identical to each other at all. Remember that even though mitosis makes identical cells, and all these cells, every single one of these has exactly the same genes, these cells in the brain are not using the same genes as these. So if I took a cell out of the brain, it would have the genes how to make a leg. It would have the genes how to make an eye. But the brain cells are not using those genes. The brain cells are only turning on the brain genes, turning off eye genes and leg genes. But if I take a cell out of the leg, only the leg genes are turned on. The brain genes and the eye genes are turned off. If we turned on the eye genes in a leg, what would grow there? An eye. But we don't have an eye growing in our leg because we only turn on the leg genes there. That process is called differentiation. After about 2 weeks, we start to call this a baby, a fetus. Well, this fetus will live in the mother's uterus. A lot of times students like to say stomach, but that wouldn't be good because that would digest the baby. The baby grows in the uterus until the baby is delivered at birth. So we have a reminder. We've seen this slide before when we were doing the cell reproduction notes, but just to remind you because it's so important, the zygote divides by which? Mitosis or meiosis? Mitosis. And because some cells are going to become inside cells, some cells are going to become outside cells, some are going to become brain, and some are going to become legs, we have differentiation. This is the growth of a baby. You can see the zygote there, not shown to scale, and how the baby looks as it grows through all the weeks of pregnancy. You can see that the baby does not look like a human being. early on. There's a lot of changes that are going to happen through all of this, but really early on, that embryo and then fetus looks an awful lot like the fetus of many mammals and vertebrates, and we'll talk about that more when we get to evolution. So I wanted to revisit a couple of little items that are really strongly tested on the regions. So this is the uterus. We saw the diagram of the uterus without a pregnancy. This is now with a pregnancy. Here's an oviduct, and over here somewhere is an ovary. Here's another oviduct, and over here is another ovary. This is the uterus, right? But this uterus is a little different. It's got a fetus, an amniotic sac, the umbilical cord that's connecting the baby to the placenta. And I want to remind you, really important, the placenta is made up of cells that are baby's blood, and that's circulating with baby cells. And then separately is mom's blood, and that's circulating with all of mom's blood vessels. And as materials, mom breathes in oxygen, goes from her lungs into her blood, comes along, it'll diffuse from mom's blood into baby's blood, and then baby will get oxygen. What does baby need oxygen for? Respiration, right? Because baby's cells need energy, so it's gonna have to do respiration, gonna need oxygen. Mom eats, digests food, small intestine. Materials go from the small intestine to the blood, travels around. Some of those go to mom's cells, and some of them go from mom's blood to baby's blood, and then into baby. So baby has materials for growing and for respiration. All of baby's waste come back out, diffuse out of baby's blood into mom's blood, and travel off to the kidneys for mom to urinate or to the lungs for her to exhale. Oops, sorry about that. And so the important thing to keep in mind with this entire thing is the placenta, partly mom's blood vessels, partly baby's. The key thing to keep in mind is the blood vessels do not mix. Mom's blood, baby's blood, they don't mix, but stuff diffuses back and forth in between. And so that is pregnancy. And here we have the view of a woman, the side view, across a longitudinal section of a pregnant woman. So you can see where the baby is. This is the uterus from the side view. There's the cervix, and that's the vagina. Right there, you can see the bladder. That's really fascinating because as this baby grows, that baby's pushing down on that bladder. So mom's going to feel like she's pregnant all the time. I mean, excuse me, mom is pregnant all the time. Mom is going to feel like she has to pee all the time because the pressure on the bladder makes it feel like it's full. Baby's also going to grow up in this direction, and that's going to push all these intestines up and push the stomach up. And you're going to see this, the muscle for breathing, the diaphragm, is pushing up against the lungs. So mom is also going to have trouble breathing in because remember, she's got to drop that diaphragm down in order to get air into her lungs. And it's going to be really hard to push it down. So she's going to have trouble breathing in. And she's going to need extra oxygen because the baby needs oxygen too. So all of that to build strain on the mom. And again, it's a good adaptation because internal development is so useful for protecting the baby, but it is a huge energy commitment from mom. And then you can see here, that's the placenta. You can see the baby's blood vessels and the mom's blood vessels not mixing. And that's where the exchange takes place.